This is Chapter 19, All Cats Are Gray by Night. The Fuchsford Union Station, roughly 3 to 4 p.m. Esther, walking on all fours, follows Abigail as they leave the station building and descend the stairs to the street. "Can you stand up?" says Abigail. Esther, hobbling with weight off of a back leg. "I shouldn't like to try. I'm still very sore in one of my hind legs." Abigail looks at her critically. Esther hops down from the final steps to the flat ground of the city street. "I'm sure it'll be fine. Maybe people will just think I'm pregnant." "That would be even worse," says Abigail. Abigail strains her head around to orient herself in the city. Making sure Esther, slow due to her limp, follows, Abigail leads her down a wide street toward the city center. She looks at the address scribbled on her paw pad. "We must be able to find a map somewhere." "Why don't we ask one of the cats back at the station?" Esther adds. "No, I can handle this," says Abigail. Abigail pauses to look around. She breathes quick and shallow breaths, and the sweat from her paw has smudged the writing, though it's still legible. Esther looks at her thoughtfully as Abigail resumes her march forward. At apartment 59 of 948 Fairview Court, Eddie crudely irons a dress shirt. Homer sits at the kitchen table, reading a good book and shifting a pair of dice between his fingers, while Betty lounges on the couch, looking at the ceiling. "Ah, Christ!" says Eddie. Betty turns her head. "What's the matter?" "Burnt my damn finger again. How can anyone be expected to play brass when chores have roasted his limbs like a duck?" "So you're going to keep playing?" "Huh?" "The saxophone. You're still going to try it as a musician?" "Well, I paid for the damn thing, and it's a pretty penny." "A pretty penny you could get back if you sold it." "Aye, but it's got sentimental value. Wouldn't feel right." "Don't tell me you've named it, too." "I'm not that crazy, Betty." Homer turns a page of his newspaper. Oh, wait, it's a book. Betty, arms stretched around her head, turns toward him. "Well, what about you, Home?" Homer takes a sip of his tea. "I was a fiddler before we met, and I'll be a fiddler after we've parted." "See, why all the talk about parting? I know things aren't the way they used to be, and we'll never forget Nolan or stop loving his memory, so wouldn't he want us to stick together for memory's sake? You talk a lot about money, Betty, but you know it's not a money problem." "I'm not playing as a group without Nolan. And I'm not cut out to run it solo like Homer is. I was only ever in it because Nolan took me into this band like family. Without him, we might as well be a headless mouse. That's not to speak ill of any of you, of course, but what's the point of sticking it out when nothing's binding us together?" "We are a family. Don't forget, Betty, I took you as a sister, and I don't intend to let you waddle out into poverty and obscurity over your inflated sense of pride." "But can't you see that we're just weighing ourselves down? You need to get your act together with a consistent career and get married. Homer can do what he wants. I think he could do well to settle down too if he gave it a shot." "Then what about you, Betty?" Betty scowls. "I need to learn to take care of myself. There's work, if I can humble myself to do it." "Not my Betty. You told me you wouldn't be caught dead as a lady-in-waiting, not to mention you're too big and ugly to make a pretty maidservant. And I'll die before resigning myself to that slavery." Betty tightens her brow. "Eddie, you're an overgrown kit. Get over yourself." Eddie, raising his paws. "Hey, I'm not trying to start a fight, miss. You brought it up in the first place. Right, Homer?" She's allowed to voice her opinion. "Oh, now they're ganging up on me. How hard is it then? How hard is it to value loyalty? After all I've done for you. Jesus Christ." The room is silent for some time. Betty grits her teeth. Eddie, frustrated, tries to resume ironing. Homer looks at his book, but doesn't read. Eventually, they hear a knock on the door, startling Eddie, who burns his paw again. Betty shoots up from the couch. "I'll get it." Betty opens the door, revealing Abigail and Esther. Abigail looks nervous, Esther curious. And Abigail will say, "Hi, bye," says Betty, and Betty closes the door with force. "Is it Mormons?" says Eddie. "Nope, doesn't matter," says Betty. Homer peers out the window from his seat. "Is that Abigail?" Yes, but... Let her in. But she's... Ugh, fine. Betty opens the door. Abigail's there, sweating and awkwardly looking up at Betty's towering figure. May we come in? Sure, whatever. Hurry up. Abigail awkwardly walks inside, followed by Esther. Eddie and Homer stare at them. Abigail has her paws clasped together, pitifully. I'm sorry to bother you. There's been a terrible accident. Audrey is missing. We think she's somewhere in the city, but I haven't a clue where to look. Have you reported it to the police? Says Betty. Yes. Then what do you expect us to do about it? Well, to be fair, says Eddie, the police are a little crap. They might find her a few years from now. Abigail sweats visibly, her eyes wide. Homer gets up from his chair and approaches her, taking her by the paw and sitting her on the couch. Have a seat, ma'am. I'm sorry to hear about this. Abigail holds back tears, taken aback by Homer's compassion. Esther sits next to her, unsure whether to do anything. The band cats look at each other. How long has she been missing? Says Eddie. Abigail blows her nose on her handkerchief. Since yesterday morning. Maribel thought that you might know where to look. Betty and Homer enter thinking position. Eddie looks at them cluelessly. Would a kid go to a bar? I have an idea, but I don't like it, says Betty. Please, says Abigail. I'll take anything. I can handle it. Hold on, I need a drink. Betty walks into the kitchen and takes a beer from the upper cabinets. And she offers one to Eddie. Eddie? No, actually. Suit yourself. She takes a swig. This better not be about your Molly Mafia. Yup. Oh, then never mind. Give me a beer. Betty gets up to get his own beer. And he says to Abigail, This might take a while. Well, give me your worst, says Abigail. Betty slams her bottle on the counter and wipes her lips with her arm. Let me tell you something about Fuchsford. This place is old, one of the oldest cities in America, and, on account of its aging, has been sorely neglected. They may try to breathe life into it with high culture, art, and theater, but polished bones are still bones. If there ever were any ghosts here, they've long since departed. Still, its obscurity provides an opportunity. You get a group of muckrakers in a bus or train down to Boston, Concord, New York, file out in picket lines and break a few business owners' windows, and then sneak right on back to the shadows of their dying city where the law won't find them. Are you talking about suffragists? Says Abigail. More or less. There's a whole swarm of them holed up in Fuchsford. And I bring this up because they're essentially the eyes of the city. Scouts around every corner, and they bring all their gossip back to their nest in the rich neighborhood. It's possible they'd take notice of your lost kit. Then could you take me there? Not me. I'm not well liked. And besides, they're wary of strangers. They'll pretend not to know what you're talking about. Any indecent establishment can't afford to operate in broad daylight. Abigail's ears twitch in frustration. Then why suggest it at all? Regardless of whatever history you have with these cats, I need to find my sister, and surely they're not so cruel as to dismiss such an earnest request. Maybe. I can send you in their direction. But don't mention me or how you came to know about them. Certainly they'll ask for a reference. You're going to look suspicious either way. What about me? Says Esther. I could pretend to be lost or a homeless kit. It wouldn't be hard. Would they turn me away? Then I could learn whether they've seen Audrey. I was going to ask, says Betty. What's this girl doing with you? She looks pathetic enough to pass as an orphan, so I'm surprised you've dragged her along. Esther is an orphan, says Abigail. As I said, there was a terrible accident, a fire. Louise gave her life to save Esther, and now Audrey's run away from home. Taken aback, the band cats stare at Abigail and Esther, astonished. Esther is sad. I'm sorry, says Betty. I didn't realize how bad things were. Is your family doing all right? Anything we can do? Says Eddie. Abigail, trying to reassure herself. As long as we get Audrey home safe, things will be better. If not, I can't say. Do you have a place to stay? Says Homer. Yes, I'm going to get a hotel. Is there one near this house you were talking about, Miss Hanson? I think so, but it won't be of the cheap kind. All the better, though. You will want a little luxury after this. Thank you. What about my plan? Says Esther. You don't need to put yourself in harm's way, Esther. I wouldn't want to subject you to any more unnecessary stress, says Abigail. I know, but if I can focus on finding Audrey, I won't feel so helpless. Besides, I might have a better chance of being accepted by these Mollies, a chance we have to take. Abigail narrows her eyes, her pupils darting round in thought. The worst that could happen is that I don't find anything, so it's worth a shot. Betty says to Abigail. Emily is with them. What? Abigail's heart skips a beat, and she looks at Betty in bewilderment. How do you know her? We were roommates many years ago, but I had a falling out with the other girl who was living with us, and she took her side. I don't blame her, but we don't speak anymore. As far as I can tell, she's the brains behind their whole operation, if she's not the formal leader. The house belongs to a lady called O'Leary, an ogre of a Molly who married rich, though no one knows what happened to her husband. Why did you never say anything to me? I didn't think it was my place to intrude. Your business is your business. In a moment of silence, Abigail considers the situation. She addresses Esther. If you want to go, I'll let you. But you must be very careful and call home if you get into trouble. And she asks to the band, Do you have a phone? Of course. I'll write it down, says Eddie. Eddie takes a paper from the kitchen table and writes down the phone number. Are you going to go tonight? Says Betty. And so it's about 4:30 in mid-February and the sun is setting. Whatever you think is best, says Esther. You certainly don't want to waste any time, says Betty. Go as you are, and ask for a hot meal or clothes. Don't tell any straight lies, but we have a good enough story to lie with them a few days, or as long as you need. Yes, ma'am, I'll try. I can't walk you there, but you'll have the address and our phone number. Don't call in their house. Use a phone booth if you need to. It's getting dark, says Homer. You should give her a little money so she can hail a coach or a taxi. Fair enough, says Abigail. We'll take one together until I get to the hotel. Take care of yourself, says Betty, and come check in with us tomorrow. There's no need to be a stranger. Good luck, Abigail. In a large Victorian house on the southern end of Fuchsford, where the grey industrial density gives way to delicately placed homes adorned with decorated front gardens, gargoyles, and ornate mailboxes, a group of well-dressed Mollies laugh around a mahogany dining table laden with charcuterie, white wine, bread and butter, and shrimp scampi. In the kitchen, a pointed tabby in khaki pants and a white blouse wipes down the counters, a bucket of water with soap and a mop on the floor. A black hedgehog dozes on the couch beside a marble fireplace lined with iron bars. The fire dwindles, neglected. Oh, now listen, darling. When I saw Mr. Edison cantering down the street in his underwear just 6:15, what do you think he said he was up for? On his way to the circus? I reckon I've seen a clown with the same chink in his forehead in Philly last June. Only the most dutiful of Toms humble themselves enough to become clowns. You know, my aunt had a rather favorable courtship with a trapeze artist. A large, deep-voiced Irish lady. Ladies, let Constance tell her tale. Well, as I was saying, when I saw Mr. Edison that morning, tinked up on his skinny greyhound, he told me. The front door flies open with a thud and the sound of howling wind, as Maggie, dragging Audrey by the forearm, marches inside. She throws the door closed as Audrey stands frozen at her side, wide-eyed and motionless. The pointed tabby meets Maggie's eyes warily. Where's Emily? Says Maggie. Why are you always needing Emily to tell you what to do? Enter Florence O'Leary, the white and black Irish Molly formerly seated at the dining table. Broad-shouldered and tall as an ogre, Florence smokes a large silver-trimmed pipe and stands imposingly at the doorway between kitchen and dining room. I find myself drawn to the sound of her voice. Hello, Florence. I didn't realize you were back. Just this afternoon. What are you doing with the lass there? Audrey stiffens. Maggie narrows her eyes. Making it someone else's problem. I need to speak with Emily. She's not home yet, and neither is my sister. I expected she'd be following you. And taking a deep breath into her pipe, lest she's picked up on old habits. Maggie scowls. She releases Audrey's arm and gestures to a floral print chair by the fire. Sit there. And to the maid. See that she doesn't leave. Maggie turns back to the front door, pulling it open as the wind slices her cheek fur. Then she disappears into the night. Florence watches her go, twirling her pipe, then looks to Audrey, who sits shivering on the chair. Florence addresses the maid. Tend that fire. The maid nods in a malicious, hushed voice. Yes, Mrs. O'Leary. The maid sheepishly throws a few twigs onto the fire, taking the bellows and blowing air onto the cinders, sending up a cloud of ash, and causing them to cough. They return to cleaning the kitchen. The hedgehog stretches, hobbling off the couch to jump on Audrey's chair, where it nestles at her paws. Outside, Maggie stands in the darkness and the wind, scant hail striking her face. Eventually, a group of 3 Mollies appear on her left, walking silently together on the opposite side of the street. At the same time, Francine and Maud rush in on her right. They approach Maggie quickly and whisper among themselves. Then, Francine departs and Maud heads inside. Emily, standing in the middle of the group of 3, meets Maggie's eyes curiously. Inside, Audrey's eyelids droop as the Mollies at the table continue to eat and laugh. The door opens as Maud O'Leary struts in, shivering dramatically. Audrey tenses upon seeing her. Brr, it's cold out there. She passes Audrey and approaches the dining room, not giving a look to the maid. Hello, Maud. Grab a chair, sweetheart. The door opens again as the 2 Mollies from Emily's group appear from the dark. Wearing worn, modest clothing that clings to their sweaty bodies, they hang their coats at the door. One nods to the maid. Hello, Billy. Good evening, Miss Terry. The other, a brown tabby with delicate black markings and longish fur, looks at Audrey. She addresses Billy. Who is this kitten, Miss Billy? I don't know, Trudka. Maggie brought her in. Trudka steps toward Audrey, bends down, and puts a paw on her forehead. Audrey lowers her eyes, ashamed to look at her. Trudka looks at her thoughtfully. She's burning. Are you hungry, dear? Audrey looks away, silent. I will be back one moment. Trudka rises and steps into the kitchen. Miss Terry leaves the dining room. Soon, Trudka presents Audrey with a cup of warm milk and sets it on a side table. Then she prepares a plate of food from the dining room, departing to join Miss Terry at the table. How did you like it in Spain, Florence? Or was it Portugal? Well, you know there's a very great difference. Audrey stares at the food, but doesn't eat. Paws assault the door as Maggie re-enters, and the hedgehog jumps from Audrey's paws and disappears upstairs. Maggie approaches Audrey as the door opens again, and Emily slides in, bowing to Billy. The cats gathered at the dining table call out their greetings to her. Hi, Emily. Good to see you're alive. Thank you. I'll be right there, says Emily. Maggie, swatting at the chair's side. Get up. Audrey closes her eyes, but reluctantly stands. Bowing her head, she stands trembling as Emily approaches. Emily looks at Audrey pitifully, then glances at Maggie. You may go now. Maggie's whiskers twitch, but she backs off and enters the dining room with the others. Emily faces Audrey, alone. You don't have to be afraid anymore. We want to help you. Audrey keeps her head lowered, obscuring her face. She clenches her paws tightly as she trembles. I'd like to see your face. Can you look at me? I know you must be very scared, but I promise you'll be safe now. The dining room has gone quiet as all watch Emily. Maggie eyes them intently. Suddenly, Audrey is staring at Emily's face, teary-eyed. Emily is a tall, large-eared tuxedo cat with short, wavy fur, a long white blaze on her nose, a thick mane of white fur, blue-green eyes, and curly whiskers. She looks down at Audrey with a troubled expression, her eyes searching her face. Emily quickly looks around her, then takes a step toward Audrey and whispers, "Can you walk?" Audrey slowly nods, still cautious, but more confused. Emily takes her paw and leads Audrey toward the staircase. Audrey looks into the dining room as they pass. All the Mollies stare at her as she disappears up the stairs, paw tightly gripped by Emily. Who is that? Audrey's eyes wander to the mirror-clad walls, reflecting the pairs of cats from all angles. Emily pauses at the top of the staircase and sniffs. She looks at Audrey's paw and her paw, the smudged blood still visible. Are you injured? Audrey stares back, unsure how to treat this new cat, but she brushes a paw past the scratch on her forehead. Emily crouches over her, examining the injury, then quickly leads Audrey into an adjacent bathroom. The room is fancy with tasseled towels and seashells, and Emily grabs a fluffy white towel and douses it with warm water from the faucet. She brings Audrey close and, with acute care, smothers her face with the towel, cleaning off the dried blood as Audrey mewls in protest, her tail fluffed up. Mere moments after Emily removes the towel and Audrey shakes her face dry, she thrusts open the mirror, revealing a medicine cabinet, opens a cap on a jug of clear liquid, and dips the tip of the towel, reapplying it over the cut. "Ow," says Audrey. "It will only sting a minute," says Emily. She grabs a clean towel and dries off Audrey's face. Then she takes her paw once more and leads her back into the hall. Audrey rubs her eyes as Emily opens a door on her right, revealing a cluttered bedroom. The bed, queen-sized with a small window over the head, is neatly made with satin purple covers and folded red plush blankets at the foot. The dresser is strewn with newspaper articles and political flyers. Audrey stares in confusion and looks up at Emily, who has stopped moving. Coming to her senses, Emily opens a dresser and takes out a maroon knit scarf, amateur's work of fluctuating width and a pattern that flips from right to wrong side, though clearly long worn. Emily hands it to Audrey. "Here, this will keep you warm. But don't wear it to sleep, you'll strangle yourself. I haven't got anything else to fit you." Audrey feels the scarf in her paws, blinking. She glances around, heart sinking. Emily grabs one of the blankets from the foot of the bed and drapes it over Audrey. Audrey looks at her sourly. "Okay, good. You can sleep here tonight, but I'll get you home to your family as soon as possible. Are they nearby?" "No? That's all right. And tell me your name." "Well, my name is Emily. I'm sorry we had to meet this way. Get some rest now." She turns off the light and closes the door behind her. Audrey stands still, closing her eyes, eyebrows twitching in annoyance. Emily lingers at the door a moment, then descends the stairs. Cats in the dining room speak in hushed whispers. A hallway behind the kitchen leads Emily to a wall phone, which, trembling, she dials. After a moment, someone picks up. And on the phone, Emily says, "Hello? It's Emily. Are you? Hello? Hello?" She drops the receiver, having been hung up on. Emily's eyes dart around in shame and frustration as Maggie calmly steps forward. "Who do you think you're calling?" Emily shoots her a critical glance. "She needs to go home, Maggie." "Not until she's come to her senses." "Did you strike her?" "I was only defending our party. Unlike you, if you will go on intending to let her loose into the world, spreading lies about us. How would you like it if Maud or I were sent up the river on some kitten's account?" "Do you think that could happen?" "Who can say? But I intend to act like a proper leader." Emily narrows her eyes, sweating. Maggie shrugs. "Maybe I'm just being an old fool. Don't mind me. Do what you want with the bastard. Hey, that's just kidding. I'm going to bed. Quit acting so serious all the time." Maggie walks upstairs to her room. Emily watches her go with wide eyes. Voices can be heard laughing once more in the dining room. As Emily walks past, they hush and stare. Emily says nothing, but nods at them, ascending the stairs. How queer. Trudka follows her. Are you well? You haven't eaten. I'm fine. Shouldn't you be getting home? Yes, but I wanted to check in on you first. Thank you. Do you know if Hattie has any clothes she could spare? And can you bring her tomorrow? I will try. Take care of yourself, Emily. You too. Be safe. Trudka leaves. Emily opens a cabinet in the walls and pulls out a blanket and pillows. She carries them toward Audrey's room. Audrey, lying down with her back to the door and head pressed against it, swivels her ear as she hears Postrips approaching. Emily drops the blanket and pillows in front of the door and lies down, back to the door, resting her head on her paws, pondering the events in silence. Audrey doesn't move, but her eyes begin to flutter close involuntarily, exhaustion taking over. End of chapter 19.